So welcome everyone. I'm Rabbi Adam Miller, and I'm delighted to welcome you all here tonight to our forum on hunger and food insecurity. I want to give credit where credit is due and talk about with wonderful praise for Susan Hager and our Tikkun Olam volunteers who have helped organize this program and many others that are coming up. They have put together these programs in an effort to educate our congregation and our community about the concern we have around food insecurity in our area. This is the first forum of what we hope will become a series, and our goals are to understand the Jewish values as they relate to our individual and communal obligations to address our neighbors in need, to learn about the overall status of hunger and food insecurity in both Collier and Lee counties, how it affects different groups within those areas, to learn about some of the programs that government, schools, and nonprofits offer to address this, to share opportunities for temple members, their families and groups to volunteer, and discuss ways that we might be able to even not just help those who are in need now, but perhaps in the future, create a sense of systemic change, addressing some of the inequities that exist within the system so that this is not something that's an ongoing process, but something that we can address a little further up the river, so to speak. So those are our goals, and we are delighted to have all of you with us here tonight. And we're going to begin tonight with a conversation about some Jewish values to root ourselves in the core that links us all together. So I'm going to share with you now our presentation on that. And we're going to start first with a text that comes to us from the Babylonian Talmud. Always be happy when you are sitting at your table, and those who are hungry are enjoying your hospitality, in order to lengthen your days in this world and the world to come. I'm going to invite someone who wants to unmute if you want to comment on this, and let me know what it is that you take away from this particular text. What is it that we're seeing here in the Talmud?
To share what you have.
Thank you, Ken. So there's an idea here about sharing what we have, about having a sense of hospitality. What else are we picking up here from the Talmud and what it's teaching us to do?
Rabbi?
Yes.
I'm a little confused by this because of my right or wrong, my understanding of Jewish values. I thought our focus, especially in Reform Judaism, was doing what's good and right now, not for the future, not to go to heaven, but to do it because it's the right thing to do. And we are commanded to take care of those who are less fortunate, hungry, ill, and so on. So I'm kind of surprised to see something about lengthening your days in this world and the world to come. I'm somewhat confused by that.
Yeah, so thank you, Tessie. So I don't want to focus too much on that piece of it, but basically what I want you to notice from that is a sense of when you do this, when you open your table for hospitality, when you welcome in others, there's something that's rewarding about it. So part of it at the beginning is always be happy when you're sitting at your table, and those who are hungry are enjoying your hospitality. So we're to feel joy when we're able to welcome in those who are hungry to our homes. And there's also the added bonus that doing these kinds of things is a blessing that to our ancestors, they believe is going to lengthen your days in this world, that you will be rewarded for it in some way, that it will be good for you and for your soul. So we wonder then, where does this come from that we're called to welcome those who are hungry to our tables, to enjoy our hospitality? And some of it stems from this text in Deuteronomy. God upholds the cause of the orphan, the widow, and befriends the stranger, providing him or her with food and clothing. You too must befriend the stranger, for you are strangers in the land of Egypt. So the text is calling us in order to befriend the stranger and to provide for those who are in need with food and clothing. And what's the reason behind it? What should we remember when we're doing these things? Suddenly you're all shy.
It's because we were strangers too. We
Good,
went
thank
through
you,
a
Di.
different
So,
situation.
right, we should be understanding of others who are in need, because at some point, we as a people were strangers. We were strangers in Egypt. And the rabbis talk about how the Israelites are treated in Egypt. It's as if they didn't exist. That when that 9th plague came, that plague of darkness on the Egyptians, the 10 plagues, the darkness was symbolic of how the Egyptians had been treating the Israelites, as if they didn't see them, as if they were in the dark about what was happening to them. They turned a blind eye to them. And so with this idea, we are to see ourselves as, if we were strangers and we were overlooked, we don't want to overlook those who are in need around us. So we're called to invite them to our table, but we also have to open our eyes and see them. And sometimes that seems very simple, but it's an important step to recognizing and seeing those who are hungry in our community, to see those who are struggling. Especially it can be challenging when we live in a place like this, like Naples, Florida, where it is so beautiful, it is so wonderful. There's so many positives all around us, that right in the middle of all that are people who are in need. And we have to remember that we were once the strangers who were ignored, and we don't want to miss them. We want to be able to look out for those who are in need, providing them with food and with clothing. And so the question is then, how do we know if someone really is in need? And the rabbis have an interesting way to look at this. In Shulchan Aruch, which is a text about how it is you should live your life, a law code, as it were, they say, one who comes and says, feed me, we don't investigate to see if he is deceiving. Rather, we feed him immediately. If he were naked and comes and says, clothe me, we investigate to see if he is deceiving. Why do you think they're making this distinction?
Because food is life to people.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I think that's a great way to look at it, Ken. So you could say about this, listen, if someone goes hungry, that can lead to their death. You shouldn't hesitate. If someone says they're hungry, you give them food. You don't delay. You don't wait. You don't look into it and question it. If someone comes to you and says, I have no clothes, you look at them and say, well, let me look a little further into this, because it's not as immediate. It is a need and you do want to help them, but it's not as immediate as hunger. Hunger is something that we shouldn't delay. We should be rushing in order to help those who are in need. And the question is, how do you help them? And apropos of our conversation tonight with representatives of the Community Foundation and Harry Chapin Food Bank, there is this interesting text that comes also from that same legal code, in which we read, in every city in which there are Jews, they are obligated to appoint of themselves tzedakah collectors who are known to the community and trustworthy. These collectors would return to the community each week and collect from every person the amount that is fitting for that person to give. They then distribute the monies each week and give each and every poor person food that will last them for 7 days. This is called the Tzedakah Fund. So notice a few things here. First of all, who bears the obligation to help those who are hungry?
Everyone.
Those
Right,
that are more
everyone.
fortunate. Yeah,
It's
yes.
a communal obligation. It's noteworthy. It's not for any one person to feel, I have to go solve it all myself. Everybody bears a piece of the obligation that we have in order to help those who are hungry. And we do so in a way that provides for them, not just in this very moment, but they gave them 7 days of food. Now look back at the text. Why 7 days? Because every week they would collect. So they made sure that if somebody was hungry and they're coming to get food, they didn't have to worry about, well, that's enough for today and tomorrow. What happens the rest of the time? They were providing sufficient food that they could sustain themselves. And who knows, perhaps put themselves in a better place over the course of the week. They wouldn't need help the next week. But they were trying to think about this. And I think it's a very good place for us to start in a conversation about helping those who are hungry, showing them hospitality, welcoming them into our community, is remembering our obligation to help those who are strangers, for we were once strangers ourselves, and also the idea that this is a communal obligation, something that we all share together. And with that, we're going to transition from talking about the Jewish values that move us and motivate us into our wonderful presenters tonight. We are blessed this evening to have two special guests who are going to be leading us this evening. So I'm going to introduce each of them separately, and they'll each present to us about 15 minutes or so, and they have their own PowerPoint presentations that they will share with us. Afterwards, we'll start taking questions for them. So if you have a question that pops up for either of our speakers, please put it in the chat, or if you want to write it down to the side and then ask it of me a little bit later, that works as well. But you can send those to me during the chat if you want directly, or to everyone. We'll get to those during our Q&A session. But allow me to introduce our first guest tonight. Please welcome Laura Simmelink. Laura is the Senior Director of Programs at the Community Foundation of Collier County. In this role, she leads community grant-making initiatives, ensuring the foundation's funding is aligned with strategic focus areas and mission. Previously, she served as a development director for several types of nonprofits and a nonprofit consultant. Laura moved to Naples in 2015. She's a graduate of Leadership Collier, class of 2017. She currently serves in the Government Relations Committee of the Greater Naples Chamber of Commerce and belongs to various professional associations. Her previous civic and volunteer work include grant-making work, committee work, board service, and other volunteering. A Wisconsin native, that makes two of us, Laura earned a BA from the University of North Carolina, Asheville, an MPA from American University in Washington, D.C., and a certificate in nonprofit management from Duke University. In her free time, she enjoys biking, tennis, water activities, and travel, all wonderful things to be doing here in Naples. Laura, welcome, and thank you for being our guest tonight.
Thank you, Rabbi Miller. That's an amazing introduction. I appreciate it. And that was also a really wonderful lesson that you led a few minutes ago. So I'm honored to be with all of you tonight. And I also wanted to thank Temple Shalom for being such a committed community partner in helping your neighbors in need. So tonight I'll be doing a very sort of fast and furious overview of community data that will help you understand the stranger in need that Rabbi Miller referred to. Sometimes it's not easy to see that there is actually a lot of poverty here in Collier County. One thing you will notice is there are some disparities between my slides and the slides that Richard LeBer will show after me. And first of all, his have better pictures, I noticed. Second of all, there's a difference in the data because sometimes it's the point at which it's collected or the geographic boundaries. So with that being said, I'm going to share my PowerPoint and get started here. So we are the Community Foundation of Collier County, and we primarily work with three things. We connect people who care to causes that matter. These are the donors who want to support the community. We help them grow their charitable legacies, and we fund nonprofit organizations to improve the quality of life in Collier County. For 35 years, we've been doing this. We also allow donors to support any charity they wish around the United States or even internationally. And so we are 36 years old, and today we manage more than 850 individual funds, donor funds, and agency funds like Temple Shalom's. We collaborate with literally hundreds of nonprofits. We hold over $276 million in assets. And since our inception, we've distributed just close to $230 million in grants to nonprofit organizations, student scholarships, and community programs. Last fiscal year, we granted about $33.5 million to the nonprofits, community programs, and scholarships. And fortunately, I'm the one that gets to distribute the grant money to the nonprofits. Oh, excuse me, I jumped past. I wanted to thank Temple Shalom for being one of our agency fund holders and thank them for entrusting us with their valuable assets that ensure their present and future needs are being met. And if anyone on this meeting is interested in helping build Temple Shalom's fund, you can work with Rabbi Miller or Deborah Fidel, and they'll be happy to discuss the funding needs and then work with us to help you establish a fund. So now on to the fun part, discussing the data. So an overview of Collier County, our population is currently around 375,000 people, and we are outpacing the rest of Florida. We are experiencing growth at a rate of about 15.8%, which is considerably higher, you'll see, than the rest of Florida. And our median household income in Collier County in 2018 was around $65,000. And that doesn't seem like a bad income, but you have to remember there's some people here with very high incomes and some people with very low incomes. And there are a lot of people who are considered ALICE. And ALICE means they fall under the category of being asset limited, income constrained, but employed. And these are people who live well above the federal poverty level, but below a basic survival threshold. And they earn too much to qualify as poor and can't take advantage of many programs that are available to people who are at or below the federal poverty level, but they still can't make ends meet. And these earners in Collier County include essential employees like law enforcement, teachers, medical workers, and people that you encounter and work with on a daily basis, a lot of service workers. And the number of these ALICE households in Florida grew from 22% in 2007 to 33% of our community in 2019. And that percentage doesn't even include the households living below the federal poverty line. So the economic of Collier County is really unique. We are one of the most generous counties in the state of Florida, fortunately for us. We ranked second in donations only to Palm Beach County. And while overall giving declined throughout most of Florida between 2016 and 2018, in Collier County, it rose by over 106 million during that 2-year time period. So we have a very, very generous community. But the visible wealth in Collier County can hide the poverty. And there's a significant income gap. You'll see the top 1% earn an average income of $4.1 million a year. And the bottom 9% of our income earners in Collier County earn an average income of around $57,000 per year. And then, of course, within that bottom 99% range, there's just a wide range of incomes. And the lowest income residents tend to live in Immokalee, Golden Gate, and East Naples. And so why is the generosity so important? Well, one of the reasons why generosity is so important is because in Collier County, there's very little money dedicated from the county budget to human services. So in the rest of Florida, every county, with the exception of Collier, dedicates around 8.5% of its total county budget to human services. This is things like healthcare, some early learning education, kind of meeting basic needs. In Collier County, we dedicate 1.5% of our budget to that, and that's usually the match that's required by state and federal grants for the local nonprofit community. So that generosity of donors in this community is very, very important and valuable and much appreciated. So quick overview of our cost of housing here in Collier County. So the median sales price for a single family home in July of 2020 was around $365,000. And this past October, it had risen to $616,000. So we are experiencing a very, a lot of inflation, a lot of the cost of housing has gone up dramatically. And what this means is middle-class people, essential workers such as law enforcement, teachers, and medical staff can't afford to live here anymore. They have to choose between paying their rent or making a house payment, healthcare, and food. So that has really increased the burden on food banks. A higher than average number of people in Collier County cannot afford health insurance. 33% of women and almost 36% of men between the ages of 25 and 34 years old are uninsured. These are the people that tend to be raising young families. And again, this rate of uninsured people in this age group is higher than the state of Florida. It's kind of another surprise about Collier County. This is a simple breakdown of poverty by age group in Collier County in 2019. You can see that a substantial number of the community are children. And then we have our adults. Oops, didn't mean to go back. There we go. And we also have a significant population living in poverty who are seniors, the age of 65 or over. Overall, about 9.3% of our community lives in poverty. Those are people who are at or below the federal poverty guideline, as opposed to what's considered the ALICE, people who earn more and too much to qualify for federal programs. And in some communities, it would be as high as 25 or 30% of that community. And in other neighborhoods, like the one I live in, there's probably no one beneath the federal poverty guideline. Our public school demographics might surprise you as well because it looks really different than you may see walking around your neighborhoods. 52% of our students in Collier County Public Schools are Latin American. 11% are Black. Typically they're Haitian. Their parents are Haitian immigrants. And 32% are considered white, Anglo-Saxon. And then a small percentage are mixed race or other races. And what's interesting also about our school system and our young people is that more than 55% of our students live in non-English speaking homes, where English is not the first language or sometimes isn't even spoken. And their parents typically work in lower paying jobs without health benefits. And these are what we consider the working poor, right? These are the families that need our food banks and some other social services to be able to make ends meet, particularly in a community where the cost of living is higher than average. You may be surprised to know that we have a significant number of homeless students in Collier County. This was really shocking to me when I first moved here. So last year, Collier County Public Schools identified and served 1,154 students and their families who were homeless. And they do a great job of documenting and serving these students. And while the current academic year numbers are not out yet, over 500 students were already identified as homeless in the first 2 months of the school year. And again, Harry Chapin and our food banks and food pantries do a really great job of partnering with our school system to help make sure low income and homeless students are fed. Richard will tell you more about that. Over 63% of our Collier County Public School students are on the free and reduced lunch program. So what this says is that the families with the children are the ones who are struggling the most, because this is a really surprisingly high number of students on the free and reduced lunch program. Another group that might surprise you to learn about is struggling in Collier County are senior women. In 2021, the average monthly Social Security benefit for women was just over $1,000. Whereas for men, it was over $1,600. And around 2,300, 2,400 senior women are living below the federal poverty level in 2018. And also twice as many senior women in Collier County live alone compared to senior men. And senior women are emerging as a really small but critical subset of homelessness in Collier County. So last year in 2020, actually, the Collier County Hunger and Homeless Coalition was reporting and tracking approximately 70 homeless senior women in Collier County. And these women sometimes sleep in tents. They often have a car, will sleep in their car and move their car from place to place in order to stay safe. Sometimes they travel together in small groups with their cars, but there is a waiting list for affordable senior housing that is 3 to 5 years long in Collier County. And how does a senior woman end up homeless? Well, illness, depression, dementia, inability to manage finances after losing her spouse can easily tip an otherwise stable senior woman into homelessness. So this is also an area that Harry Chapin does programming around our seniors. And Richard will talk more about that later. So that was sort of a very fast overview of the demographics and poverty in Collier County, and hopefully laying the stage for Richard to explain in greater depth how his organization addresses this through addressing hunger and food insecurity. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Appreciate that very informative presentation to us, really setting the stage for the conversation we're going to have. The questions are already popping up. You can start thinking about your reactions to, especially ones related to what more can be done to encourage our local government to play a role in supporting this, and questions along the line. I know I've gotten a couple wanting to know like how the Community Foundation's grant money functions in this process of addressing hunger and homelessness. So I'll seed those for you to start thinking about as we now welcome our second guest, Richard LeBer. Richard is the president and CEO of the Harry Chapin Food Bank and has been since February of 2016. Since that time, he has led the food bank to new records in sourcing and distribution of food in the Southwest Florida community to which it serves. Richard has a long career of community involvement, transformation, and impact with deep experience in the for-profit and not-for-profit sectors, particularly food banking, fundraising, board leadership, strategy, and operations. Richard previously held numerous leadership positions, including interim executive director of the Florida Association of Food Banks, vice president at the Atlanta Community Food Bank, and CEO of National Linen Service. Richard is past chairman of the board of the Atlanta Community Food Bank and former board member of the Georgia Mountain Food Bank. He's a graduate of the Harvard Business School and the University of Waterloo in Canada. Richard is married and has 2 grown children. Richard, welcome to our forum tonight. We are delighted to have you as our guest.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Miller. I'm excited to be here and have a chance to chat with you all. And so without further ado, I'm going to see if I can get my PowerPoint started up here and shared with everybody. So just one second. Hopefully you should be seeing it.
You do indeed.
Okay, good. There we go. All right. So here I've gone too far. We serve a lot of people at the Harry Chapin Food Bank, and I thought maybe I'd start with a couple of different examples just to give you a sense of who it is that we're seeing. This is London. Now, these are all real clients, by the way. I have omitted their last names for privacy, but London's mother works in an elementary school and his dad works in construction. And when London's mom delivered his new little sister, she had some pretty significant health issues that meant that the doctors told his mom she should stay home and take care of the baby for as long as the baby was at risk. And in order to do that, that really, messed up their budget. They started coming to our pantry, which is when we met them. I will say the good news here is we were able to help them. They were able to avoid, more serious consequences of this. The little girl has since recovered and it's now fine. Mom was able to go back to work. And so, we're really happy that we were able to help London and his family. This is Betty. Betty, oops, I'm sorry. What's going on here? There we go. This is Betty. Betty is a senior. She's in her 80s. Her husband passed away and after a prolonged illness left her with very little. She lives off of Social Security, which as you heard is about $1,000 a month or so. And food stamps, which in her case is $15 a month. She also sells crafts on Etsy and coupons and takes in laundry from neighbors and does a variety of other things to supplement her income, but it doesn't add up to enough to keep to pay her rent and keep food on the table. And so she gets food every month from a senior program we operate that provides boxes of food to seniors. This is Bill. Bill is a veteran, returned from his service to our country with some significant disabilities, has had a difficult time transitioning back to civilian life, has had a difficult time holding down employment. He volunteers at his local veterans organization, and he gets food from the pantry that they operate for which we provide the food. So those just a few quick examples of the kinds of people that we see. But I want to talk about, and by the way, their needs are various, the folks that we serve. They certainly need food. In addition, they very often need a variety of other things. They may need shelter or housing, protection in some cases an issue, particularly if they're homeless. Transportation is certainly an issue in Southwest Florida, clothing, supplies, medical assistance. They may need faith-based services and support, substance abuse counseling, a variety of issues. So we work together with about 150 other organizations that help us that along the way are feeding people, and we provide the food for that, but they also help provide the services these people need. You may be thinking, and I think Laura's started us on this conversation, why is it that there are so many hungry people in Southwest Florida? First of all, there are quite a lot of them. Harry Chapin Food Bank only serves Southwest Florida, and the 5 counties that we serve are on the map here. Collier County is the second largest county by population that we serve, but we also serve Lee, Charlotte, Hendry, and Glades. The size of the red circles represents the number of food insecure people. This is all pre-COVID data. We don't really have updated post-COVID data yet, but I think the relative sizes of these relative to one another is probably relatively unchanged. You can see that Lee County has about 86,000 hungry people. Collier County has about 38,000. That is 10% of the population in the case of Collier County and 12% in Lee County. The Charlotte County has a higher percentage, but it's much smaller population. And Hendry and Glades have very high percentages of food insecurity, but the population of those 2 counties, they're both very rural. So the entire population of Glades County, for example, in an area that is about the same size as Lee County, is only 13,000 people. Just to maybe show this in a different way, imagine for a second, this is all Collier County data, what I'm going to go through the next minute or two. Imagine that the size of the bounded white area on your screen here is the total population of Collier County. If that's so, then, which is about 378,000 people, the number of hungry people is the size of the blue box, about 10%, 38,000 people. The number of hungry children is about the size of the light blue box, 13,000 people, 1 in 5 kids. The number of seniors within that box is about the size of the red box, roughly about 15%. The number of hungry veterans we estimate is about the size of the other light blue box, and it overlaps the senior box, but I don't really have good specific data about how large that overlap is, but I think you get the idea. And just for sake of comparison, this is the size of the homeless population. So you can see there are many more hungry people than homeless people in Collier County. This is the size of the number of cases of abuse reported in Collier County in the course of a year. This is the number of mental health cases reported in Collier County in the case of size of a year. So you can see that's a large number. And I should point out that these boxes and circles all overlap one another, although they're not shown that way on the chart. I have no idea exactly how, proportionally they overlap one another. So I'm not trying to confuse the graph with that. But for those of you who are visually oriented, maybe this helps you understand, particularly an issue, and I think a common area of misunderstanding among members of the public is I frequently have people tell me something along the lines of, it's wonderful what the food bank does for the homeless. That's certainly true. As I said, about 7% of the people that we serve are homeless, but 93% of the people that the food bank serves are not homeless. And so it's a misunderstanding of the issue if you think that homelessness is the cause of hunger. Homelessness is a result of many things. So is hunger. Those two things overlap. Frequently the homeless are hungry, but infrequently are the hungry homeless. If that makes any sense. All right, let's see if we can move along here. You may be thinking, good heavens, how in Collier County could it possibly be true that we have that many hungry people? And I think, as Laura pointed out, you need to understand the economics here. This is an expensive place to live. The left-hand side here are some comparative data. The living wage, $67,000. That comes from a study that MIT does every year. That's the living wage for a family of 4 in Collier County, two wage-earning adults, 2 kids. We start a police officer at $40,000. We start a teacher at $38,000, and a variety of other jobs there. Obviously, those 2 jobs are among the higher-paying service industry jobs. If you're doing food prep, it's $21,000. If you're working in a minimum wage job, it's $17,500. So we have a lot of people And by the way, the median house prices are through the roof and keep going up, as do rents. I was hearing stories yesterday about people's rents going from $1,800 a month to $2,800 a month just this last year. People cobble together a living. You know, most of them on a normal, many of them are working families, and on a normal basis, they're okay, but there's no margin for error in it. They are not living high on the hog. They are not putting money away in savings. They don't have much, if any, money left over at the end of the month. And so they frequently find that they fall short, sometimes for temporary reasons or for systematic reasons, like we talked about with London. Somebody gets sick, somebody loses their job, there's a divorce, there's a mental health issue, there's whatever, a medical issue, medical expenses. So lots of things happen, and that tends to be a trap for people. People experience an economic hardship that causes them to have a strained budget, and they compensate by, you know, cutting back on their food, because that's one of the few things you can cut out of your budget easily. You can't stop paying your rent. You can't stop making your car payment. And then unfortunately, that has other consequences and challenges, right? People who are not well fed don't necessarily make the best decisions. They are not as mentally acute as they might be. Imagine trying to go and search for a new job and present yourself in a an effective and energetic and articulate way to a potential employer when you haven't had anything to eat for 2 or 3 days. Imagine being a small child and sitting in school and you know, trying to sit still and concentrate and behave and learn what, you know, what is being taught to you when, you know, it's Monday and you didn't get any food over the weekend. This is, you know, these tend to exacerbate the whole situation. If you were sick to begin with and then you don't feed yourself, chances are very good that that's not going to help your illness. So it's a trap that people can get stuck in, and we try our best to try to help them avoid it. So where the food bank comes in, because there really is no shortage of food in America. 40% of the food we grow never feeds anybody. But it has to be in a usable form at an affordable price in the right place at the right time. If you're hungry in Golden Gate today, it doesn't do you any good if I tell you I can feed you in Immokalee next week. That's really where the food bank comes in. We are in the middle of a system that links food sources, retailers, that's our single largest source, farms, manufacturers, wholesalers, food drives, with the organizations that feed the hungry and the people that they serve. We do that directly with our own programs and indirectly through other organizations like Meals of Hope and St. Matthew's House and Grace Place and Our Daily Bread and Marco Island. They all get a substantial majority of their food from us. And in order to do that, we bring resources to the table, which is funders and volunteers and partners and food sources, et cetera, in order to make all that work. We've been doing that for 38 years, by the way. So sources and uses of food, just to give you a sense of how this works, is, you know, on the left are sources. The first 3 alphabet soup items are federal programs. So that's the equivalent pounds of food provided. In some cases, it's money. In some cases, it's directly food. You can see grocery stores are the largest item and farms second. Manufacturers, food coming in from outside the region, and food drives. While they're important organizations and we love the organizations and members of the community doing food drives for us, it is a relatively small portion of our sources of food. The red bar at the bottom is a new one in the last year, or year and a half. This is February data from the kind of the height of the pandemic, but in that month, we purchased over 1 million pounds of food. We have been spending as much as $1.2 million a month buying food recently. And for sake of contrast, the data pre-COVID, my budget for food purchases was $57,000 a month. So it went from 57,000 to 1.2 million with COVID. It did that so that we could increase the amount of food that we were providing. It also did that because we're running a lot of mobile pantries, as you can see on the right, if you look at where the food goes. Those mobile pantries all have to be packed ahead of time. They all have to be boxed up so we can put it in the back of somebody's car so we don't pass the virus around. And because it needs to be pre-packed, it needs to be a standard assortment of items. And you can't really rely on donated food for that. The one problem with donated food is you never know what you're going to get until it shows up. So it's difficult to run a program like a mobile pantry program with just donated food. So you can see that the majority of our food, about 2/3 of it goes to other organizations. When it says agencies, that means St. Matthew's House and Grace Place and those places. About 1/3 of it goes to our own mobile pantry program. The rest of it goes to our senior programs and our family kits and other uses. And the animal programs, that's what we do with stuff that isn't fit for human consumption. We have a pig farm and a wildlife farm that get food from us. And in many cases, they can feed things to the animals that you wouldn't want to feed to your family. So we waste very little. This is our history of food distribution. We started in 1984. The first year we operated, it was a few thousand pounds of food. And you can see how it has skyrocketed. 2008 with the Great Recession was a real turning point for us, as for most food banks, and you can see the numbers really grew after that. Of course, in 2017 we had Hurricane Irma, and coronavirus has grown our numbers enormously from about 26 million pounds of food pre-COVID to 47.6 million pounds of food last fiscal year. Which is almost that's a full year of COVID. COVID's changed our work a lot. There's been a huge increase in need. We have been fortunate enough and are proud that we've been able to greatly increase our volume as a consequence. We're doing a lot more mobile pantries than we were, about 6 times as many families. We're doing about a dozen or more mobile pantries every week. We're doing a lot more food purchasing, as I talked about. We've made lots of operational changes, like distributing food in boxes to people's cars, and social distancing and masking and sanitation and all kinds of things in response to COVID. And so all of that means that our needs for support have increased, but I'm here to tell you that we are so grateful to our very generous community, and including Temple Shalom, of course. You guys have been supporting us for a long time. I believe that the giving from the temple officially alone, not counting individual gifts from members of the congregation, it exceeds $72,000. So it's wonderful. We have a large increase in volunteer needs as well. Every one of those mobile pantries, a dozen a week, every one of them needs about a dozen volunteers. So that's a lot of work. Our programs, to summarize quickly, we serve several different categories. As I think I mentioned earlier, our largest category is working families, many with kids, so kids and parents. We have several programs that serve seniors, veterans, and others. We run pantries in schools. We run mobile pantries. We have Harry's Helpings kits, which are designed to be used at organizations whose primary mission isn't feeding people, but they have clients who need help. So it's designed to be a box that can go in a closet, and all the agency needs to do is provide us with some closet space and a clipboard, and they can, have food to give out to people. Care and Share and CSFP are 2 different but very similar seniors programs. One is funded by the federal government, the other is funded privately. The one for Collier County is privately funded by us. We have summer feeding programs, and nutritional education programs, and then of course we distribute via agencies, as you saw earlier, which depending on the agency serves just about all of these populations. Here's a photo of the warehouse. This is our main warehouse, which is actually in Fort Myers. We have a satellite warehouse in Naples. You can see that's all food stacked to the ceiling. So we, 50 million pounds of food a year is a lot of food. It's about 4,000 tractor trailer loads every year. So it's a lot. Here's some volunteers sorting food. We use volunteers to do this because the food often comes to us in forms that isn't directly usable. So the carrots in this case came to us in a tote like the one that's in the foreground, and what the volunteers are doing is taking the carrots out and putting them in small net bags of 2 or 3 pounds of carrots, so that you have it in a form that you can distribute it to to agencies and they can give it to families. Here are volunteers building those kits to go in cars like we talked about. So you can see they're all masked up and distanced. What they're doing is, the gentleman at the beginning is putting a couple of cans of green beans in the box, and the next person is putting in some rice, and the next person is putting in some shelf-stable milk, etc. So that by the time it gets to the end of the line, there's a standard kit built, and we seal it up and send it off. We do about 7,000 kits like this every week. We do it this is in Fort Myers you're looking at, but we do it at our Naples facility near the Naples airport pretty much every day of the week too. Here's a mobile pantry distribution close up. So there's our truck, and you can see the head of the line of cars, and they're putting things in the trunk. So the cars will go, sometimes a mile down the road. We'll see 600 or 700 cars at a distribution. Here's one of our drivers delivering a load of food to an agency. So we, put it on our truck and take it to them. They get it absolutely free of charge from us. Most agencies get a delivery once a week. And here's clients at an agency getting food. This is actually a pre-COVID photo, which is why they're not wearing masks, etc. But you get the idea. So that's what we do. I wanted to highlight a few, how this is affected, because it's not just the Harry Chapin Food Bank we're talking about. We're really at the center of a network here that works together to feed the hungry. So just some example statistics. St. Matthew's House, in the year preceding COVID, distributed 93,000 pounds of food that came from us. In the year, the first full year of COVID operations, they distributed 1,981,000 pounds of food that came from us. So there's an enormous increase in volume there because of the food we were able to provide them with. Meals of Hope tripled in size. Again, food from us, 920,000 pounds of food. So they were already a very large agency of ours, to almost 3 million pounds of food from us. And it's not just in Collier County. This is a Lee County agency. Community Cooperative is one of the larger agencies in Lee County. They went from 384,000 pounds of food from us to 561,000. So you can see we have 150 agencies. Many of them have grown enormously. We're so grateful to them for their hard work. That involved them increasing their needs for support and their number of volunteers, and really stepping up to take care of their neighbors and friends. There are lots of opportunities, volunteer opportunities, to get involved with the food bank. If you would like to do that either individually or as groups, you can sign up at Harry Chapin Food Bank or hcfb.org. Either one works. You can hold a food drive. You can hold a virtual food drive. You don't even have to go to the public store and buy something. You can go to our website and set up a virtual food drive and tell them you want to give us the equivalent of 10 cans of green beans, and it'll tot up the cost and charge your credit card, and you can get the equivalent amount of value. You could come build food kits as a volunteer with us. You can come bag vegetables and fruit or sort rescued groceries. We're doing that kind of work 5 or 6 days a week. You can distribute food at a mobile pantry. We have office work and other projects that we need help with frequently. You can help us develop our long-range plan. We have committees that are at work on various projects for the food bank, and we have a board of directors that is always looking for capable, experienced people. That's a by-election kind of a process where we evaluate candidates. If you're interested in helping, please let us know. We're always looking for capable, dedicated people to help. And I want to mention, if you don't mind, the paid announcement for just a second. The food bank is able to do a lot with your donations. We turn, when you're talking about donated food, we can turn $1 of donations into $8 worth of food value provided to the community, because the food is free. We just have to pay for the staff and the diesel fuel and the insurance and the power bill to run the freezers and all that kind of stuff. 96% of the money we take in donations goes directly to programs that feed the hungry, and only 4% go to administrative and funding overhead. We are Charity Navigator 4-star rated, which is their highest rating, and have been for 12 years running. So we are, I think, a trustworthy and high impact place to support if you believe in the kind of work that we're doing. So that's all I've got to say. I'm going to stop talking and turn it back over to the rabbi so you can ask questions or whatever you'd like to spend the time talking about.
Thank you, Richard. I appreciate that. And I think it's time for us to get to some of the questions that are coming in. There's a lot of interesting things that people are raising, and I'm going to try to balance it between the two of you. So I'm going to ask is that when you give your answer, just know there's a number of questions. So you don't have to give the 30-minute version. You can do like the 2-minute version or 1 minute. Just know there's other questions that are coming up, but people are very much interested in learning more about both of your organizations and what you're doing in this area of food insecurity and hunger in our community. And Laura, I'd like to start with you because we've come to this project today talking about how we can partner together. And that's a big part of what the Community Foundation does, is bringing groups together. And I happen to know, as I've attended it in the past, you've hosted the Hunger Summit. For those in our audience, tell them about that and how that plays a role in hunger and food insecurity in Collier County and beyond. Oh, you're on mute still. Zoom is with us always.
I believe the Hunger Summit has actually been organized by our food banks, and we host the space. But we do serve as a community leader and a community convener to bring people to the table. And we have public meeting spaces. We published some issue papers that are all on our website this past fall. And we are actually now open to business. Our boardroom is back open, and I'm not sure if our food banks are planning on hosting a Hunger Summit again this winter, but they are welcome to. Richard, can you speak to that?
That's a good, thanks for bringing that. We would like to do that. Yeah. I'll talk to my staff about that.
Sorry, I've sort of fumbled my way through it, but it's with COVID, we were completely shut down for public meetings last year, and then we planned to do it and then shut it back down, and now we're back open.
Now it's official here. Temple Shalom is helping restart that Hunger Summit concept. Wonderful.
Right.
Well, I've gotten people asking questions, Richard, about how does Harry Chapin compare to what's happening in other communities? As our food bank for Southwest Florida, what are the things that we do differently here? What are the places where you'd like to see us change or grow? And what can we learn from how other communities around us are handling hunger and food insecurity in this age of COVID?
Well, I think in general, the answer is we're doing well. In fact, I had the CEO of the National Association Feeding America in our food bank this morning. And she told me that nationwide, the average increase in volume at food banks around the country is about 35% from pre-COVID to post-COVID. Ours was closer to 100%. In fact, at the peak, it was more than that. So, we take some pride in that. And we think we've closed the gap some this year with the generous support of everybody. But I will also say that I think in some ways our region was harder hit than some other places because of the combination of relatively little, manufacturing industry and that sort of thing, because we're so seasonal, because we were so much affected by, the impact on tourism and travel. We saw a larger impact, I think, than some areas. There's lots of examples of things we could do better where there's plenty of room for opportunity. I will say that there is a very active network of food banks around the country. We are actively, in communication with one another and collaborate and share best practices and share food. Because, in January and February, when Florida is harvesting, there's more food coming out of the farms than we can handle. But at that same time, up the East Coast, most of our neighboring states and food banks don't have anything much in the way of fresh produce. So that's a great example of the kind of things we do together. There are challenges here, as there was some conversation in the chat about, why are the social services levels in Collier County so low? I think we need to work on these things. I think Southwest Florida has the benefit and the virtue of being, as a community, a young one, a new one that didn't exist in its current shape and form 30 years ago. But I think we're beginning now to recognize that being a mature community, you have to find ways to take care of everyone in the community if you want it to prosper. and that takes some work and may take spending some money, even though you would maybe prefer not to have to do that. So, we've got plenty of opportunity to wrestle with that kind of thing.
Wonderful. Thank you, Richard, for that information. That helps us to appreciate where we are and the blessing of having the Harry Chapin Food Bank here and the work that you've been doing for all of us across Southwest Florida. Laura, from all the information we're gathering from both of your organizations, there's a lot of money that's being put into that work, a lot of private sector money. People have asked, are there opportunities to do microfinancing locally? And are there opportunities to help start new ways to address the food and hunger insecurity with the funds that are coming in?
Well, gosh, maybe I can start by providing an overview of what we've been doing. So the day that the World Health Organization declared a global pandemic, we opened our Collier Comes Together COVID Relief Fund. And we collected, like 1.4 or 1.6 million. And we've distributed most of that to a range of nonprofits to help them deal with COVID. A lot of it did go to hunger and food. We also work closely with our donor advised fund holders. These are the hundreds of donors that have charitable funds. When we work closely with them to direct hundreds of thousands of dollars in gifts to Harry Chapin Meals of Hope, and then all the small food pantries that range from ones that may serve thousands of people down to a tiny church pantry that may deliver food to a few dozen people. We also partnered with our local government. We were one of only a few community foundations in the United States that did this to help distribute the federal stimulus funds, the CARES Act funds, and the American Rescue Plan Act funds. And so we worked as a pass-through. We took no fees on it, but we did it distributing $10.5 million since August of 2020 because works on a reimbursement basis. So it's sort of an impact investing model, if you think of it that way. Most of the nonprofit food pantries and smaller food banks didn't have the cash reserves to purchase the food and then wait months and months for reimbursement. And so we used our cash reserves and our staff capacity to reimburse. And I'll say I've gotten on a very first name basis with Richard's finance staff. They probably never want to hear from me again. But we're just about to distribute the final 2 checks to Harry Chapin and Meals of Hope of that $10.5 million. So all in all, we've passed millions and millions of dollars through for food funding. We do sometimes work with our donors. I think this has been a real eye opener for us, working with these federal and state funds, of how often nonprofits don't have the cash reserves to take advantage of the federal grants. And so we are willing to do no interest loans and work with a donor, one of our donors, to kind of do a rolling loan from their fund that will help those nonprofits take advantage of federal grants so they have the cash reserves to do that. Let's see if there's anything else that I didn't mention. I think, did I answer your question?
Absolutely. And it's wonderful to hear that much money is flowing through. And this speaks to the partnership role of the Community Foundation in supporting the work of the local nonprofits and how they are changing our community for the better. We're talking about some very large numbers right now, but we also have to remember some of the smaller numbers that matter here as well. Richard, if you could put in perspective for some of those who are in our audience, when someone receives federal resources or state resources to help them with food, it's not a significant amount. A couple of years ago, I did one of those SNAP challenges for a weekend, and trying to survive on those amounts of resources is almost impossible. Talk to us a little bit about where those numbers are and compared to what we might usually be spending in our own budgets for food.
Yeah, well, I think there's several numbers that, we talked earlier about the Social Security numbers at $1,000 a month for a single woman and $1,800 for a man, which, first of all, the inequity is kind of striking. And secondly, neither one of those numbers is a very big number when you think about what rent and everything else costs. And the one that frequently shocks people is the numbers for food stamps, or SNAP is the technical term. First of all, that program has changed enormously over the years. It has been whittled away and whittled away and whittled away over the years. Secondly, it really is a local option kind of thing. Each state sets their own levels for, what they reimburse people for. So if you are in some northern states, it's a much more generous amount of money. Here in Florida, for example, the typical amount for a senior single person is $15 a month for food stamps. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't think I can remember the last time I got out of a grocery store for less than $15, and it certainly didn't last me a month. So we're grateful that that money is better than zero, but it is probably one of the examples of the highest impact thing that the country could do, would be to increase food stamp allotments, and for the state of Florida to increase food stamp allotments. That is not a universally politically popular opinion. We're judicious in how we deliver that message and who we deliver that message to, but I think that would be a big change for folks. It would have an enormous impact on the real hunger level of a lot of people who are struggling.
Thank you for that. It's stunning to hear those kinds of numbers, $15 a month. So we're nearing the end of our time that we allotted, and we want to learn more from both of you, but also to create opportunities for people to continue the engagement. So I'd like to open the floor for each of you to share with us how individuals who are on this call, who feel moved and motivated by this conversation about hunger and food insecurity, can continue to work as individuals and within the larger community to address this issue. Laura, do you want to start first?
How individuals can help? Well, first of all, I always suggest that if they want to get involved and they're not sure where to start, they can use our website as a resource. We have a link called the Nonprofit Directory as a listing of all the nonprofits. You can search by cause, you can search by focus area, and then you can read all about the organization, and it's sort of like apples to apples. They have a page tab where they can give you a link where you click to volunteer. They have a wish list stating their funding needs. So I always encourage people to go to our website or to reach out to us directly. And then if they have an existing relationship with an organization like Harry Chapin or one of their smaller agencies that they serve, reach out directly to them. One thing that Richard mentioned was the strong need for volunteers. And I can tell you that just about every nonprofit experienced a real need for volunteers when the pandemic hit. And many of them are starting to recover financially, but they still have not regained the lost volunteers. And so if you're willing and able to give your time, I know the nonprofits will all appreciate that very much.
Great, thank you. Richard?
Lots of ways for people to get involved. Time, talent, and treasure, obviously. But in terms of time, just to give you some examples. I think I had a fairly comprehensive list in my chart of volunteer opportunities. We're always trying to increase our connections to community. One of the ways you can help is to just carry on this conversation with your family and with your neighbors and with within the synagogue. Ask questions, talk to your elected officials, and ask them what they know and what they're doing. If you want to reach out to me, you're more than welcome to. It's rleber@harrychapinfoodbank.org. I'll be happy to talk to you. We love to give tours. If you want to see in person, what we're doing, we love to do that. We're out in communities. That's a major initiative for us. So, we just did a food drive. We did a food drive with you. We just did a food drive at Gray Oaks. I'm going to go speak to that community association here in the near future. We're doing one in Aquilane Shores. So if you're involved with community organizations and you'd like to have somebody come talk to get the word out, or you want to support us with a food drive, just get in touch and we'll be happy to help you get engaged.
Wonderful. Laura and Richard, thank you so much for being our guests tonight, for educating us on what's happening in our community and opening our eyes so that we can indeed see the need that is all around us and begin the path towards welcoming those who are hungry to our tables, that our hospitality and our welcome can help turn them from being strangers to being part of our family and our friends. And in doing that, may we bring a lot of blessing to our community. I want to turn it over for our final word to Susan Hager, who helped organize this and who's going to tell us about our next upcoming forum. Susan.
Thank you. I just want to thank all of you for your informative presentations. I heard several opportunities for action and all that data: volunteering, funding, virtual food drives, no interest loans, increasing government funding for SNAP. That was intriguing. So you should know that our congregation's members have taken a very active role in this issue. As Richard noted, over the past 2 high holidays, we've done funding drives and we've raised over $71,000 for the food bank, and over our food drives have donated over 3,000 pounds of food. And that's a significant commitment. But given what you've learned tonight, especially about the impact COVID has had on hunger and food insecurity, we know that we can and must do more. Ralph Waldo Emerson once said, "Do not go where the path may lead. Go instead where there is no path and make a trail." And my feeling is that with all of the talent among Temple Shalom members, I am counting on us to be able to do just that. What's next for the forum series? I'm happy to tell you that on January 12th at 1:30 in the afternoon, Dr. Jacqueline Pfaffer, the president and CEO of the Naples Senior Center, is going to talk a little bit more about the impact on seniors. And Elizabeth Alfaro, who's the director of nutrition services for Collier County Public Schools, is going to drill down a little bit more about the impact on school children, which was very strongly illustrated in some of Richard's slides about what happens to kids who come to school hungry. On February 16th, Michael Overway, who's the director of the Hunger and Homeless Coalition of Collier County, will discuss the impact on the homeless, while a representative of the Alice Project talks to us a little bit more about the impact of hunger and food insecurity on working families. So again, I want to thank you all for joining us this evening. Thanks to our presenters and Rabbi Miller, and we look forward to seeing you all in January. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.